In 1981, the fastest train in the world made its debut in France. Its name? A simple three-letter acronym, TGV, which stood and still stands for Train à Grande Vitesse, which, literally translated, simply means high-speed train. 1981 was also the year François Mitterrand was elected president of France. He was the first socialist to hold this position in the French Fifth Republic. Somehow, the election of the first socialist president of the French Republic also coincides with the last time France blessed the world with a technological marvel, putting an end to a quarter of a century during which France showered the world with some of the greatest technological developments. It all started in 1956, 22 years after the introduction of the first unibody front-wheel drive car, aptly named the Traction Avant, which literally means front-wheel drive. Citroën introduced yet another trendsetter, the DS-19, more commonly known as the DS. The futuristic design of the DS, at the time, along with some innovative technology, single-handedly set new standards in ride quality, handling, and braking. The car's influence on the automotive industry was such that in 1999 it placed third in the Car of the Century poll, and was named the most beautiful car of all time by Classic and Sports Cars magazine. 6 years later, in 1962, the SS France embarked on her maiden voyage, an ocean liner. SS France would be the longest passenger ship for 40 years, until RMS Queen Elizabeth II took to the seas in 2004. For 12 years, SS France would be one of the most remarkable ambassadors of France, combining regular transatlantic crossings and occasional cruises, although she never broke the speed record across the Atlantic Ocean established by SS United States, which still holds the blue ribbon to this day. SS France was a testimony of France's expertise in shipbuilding. However, as the age of the transatlantic liner came to a close, due in great part to the rise in popularity of air travel, France would prove that it could conquer the sky as well. In 1969, Concorde took off from Toulouse, in southern France, for its first flight. In 1976, Concorde officially entered service for Air France and British Airways, a joint venture between the United Kingdom and France. Concorde would instantly become the world's fastest civilian aircraft, flying at speeds of up to 1,354 miles per hour or 2,179 kilometers per hour, a record it still holds to this day. As mentioned in the introduction to this piece, 5 years after Concorde entered service, the TGV became the fastest train in the world. Although not the first high-speed train, which honor goes to the Japanese Shinkansen, TGV was a technological marvel in itself. Showcasing the French engineering know-how, TGV would break several speed records, and in 2007, a specially tuned TGV hit a speed of 357 miles per hour, or 574.8 kilometers per hour. To this day, no conventionally wheeled train has come close to beating TGV's record. TGV's development is doubly remarkable. When development started, in the 1960s, French engineers also developed an alternative technology, known as the aerotrain, a train that rode on an air cushion, thus eliminating steel wheel on steel tracks friction. Although TGV eventually won this battle for the train of the future, the aerotrain is a testimony to the seemingly limitless French innovation and creativity that was in full swing from the 1950s to the early 1980s. Other than transportation, France was also a heavy player in the energy industry, and more specifically the nuclear power industry. So much so, in fact, that the names of late 19th century and early 20th century French scientists such as Becquerel, Curie, or Joliot-Curie have become intricately linked with nuclear sciences. In 1960, France became the fourth country in the world to develop nuclear weapons, and first country to do so fully independently. Yes, little-known fact. The American nuclear research and development of the 1940s and 1950s was done in partnership with the UK. As for the Soviet Union, well, it consisted of 15 sovereign nations. To this day, France still has the third largest number of nuclear weapons deployed, behind the United States and Russia. In 1971, France also became the fourth country in the world to develop a nuclear submarine. In fact, the third one, considering the first British nuclear submarine really was an American vessel. Alas, if France was a technological juggernaut from the 1950s to the early 1980s, this golden age is a bygone era. France's first nuclear aircraft carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, launched in 2001, turned into a very expensive joke, spending more time being fixed than being deployed. As mentioned previously, the world-renowned TGV beat numerous speed records and still holds the world record for a steel-wheeled train. However, whereas the French rested on their laurels, the Japanese, who invented the high-speed train to begin with, when the Shinkansen began operations in 1964, further developed new railway technologies. As of 2023, the Chuo Shinkansen, that is the Japanese maglev, which stands for magnetic levitation, beat TGV's record 3 times, setting the latest world record in 2015, reaching a speed of 375 miles per hour, or 603 kilometers per hour. Worse yet, as of 2023, TGV is just one high-speed train among a plethora of other high-speed trains developed all over the world, in the sky as well. France no longer enjoys the prestige it had gained with Concorde. Granted, Concorde was a commercial failure, but it remains to this day one of the most revered commercial airplanes ever designed, if not the most revered, and a technological marvel. Nowadays, however, France is known merely as one of the multiple partners that own the European aerospace corporation Airbus, a company registered in the Netherlands, not in France. As for the French automotive industry, well, 21st-century French cars are known all over Europe as rust buckets, infamous for their horrendous build quality and lackluster performance. The country that once offered the world cars as iconic as the Citroën 2CV, Citroën DS, Renault Alpine, Renault 5 Turbo, or Peugeot 205 GTI, to name a few, is no longer able to produce anything worthy of our attention. Before you ask about Bugatti, nowadays, Bugattis are developed by German engineers. So, what happened to France? How come a country that was at the forefront of technology suddenly stalled? Well, between the date of creation of the French Fifth Republic, in 1958, and 1981, France had always been led by conservative presidents such as Charles de Gaulle. Since 1981, and the election of socialist President François Mitterrand, France has unfortunately turned into a multicultural hellhole, incapable of producing anything of value. After a quarter of a century of spearheading the world's technological advances, French innovation suddenly ground to a halt when France veered full left. Coincidence? Think about it. Never has a society led by a leftist ideology produced anything valuable. Sure, the Soviets sent the first man in space, but as soon as the Americans put their backs into conquering space, the Soviets could no longer compete. Under Mao Zedong, famine and starvation was China's everyday reality. It is only when Deng Xiaoping imposed his economic reforms and turned China into a quote-unquote socialist market economy, which in reality is the most insanely capitalistic economy in the world, that China soared to heights never seen before. France, in the late 20th century, went the opposite way. It went from a conservative society, under Charles de Gaulle, home to pioneering engineers and bold entrepreneurs, to a progressive dystopia unable to dream big, jealous of successful men, and rejoicing in mediocrity. If anything, France unwillingly proved that conservatism leads to daring and innovative projects, whilst progressivism leads to misery, violence, and chaos. Unfortunately, nearly all Western countries have chosen to follow in France's footsteps into decadence and all-round decay, whilst Asia has resolutely opted for conservatism and success.